Hey class, happy Tuesday. Hope everyone is doing well. Um, we are having Zoom classes this week if you would like to join. For right now, they are optional. Just want to give everyone a chance to kind of see each other's faces, hear each other's voices, catch up a little bit. You don't even have to stay the whole time. I know some students have another Zoom at the same time, so you can make it great. First period is going to have a Zoom meeting tomorrow, Wednesday, at 1:30. Second period, you are tomorrow at 2:30. Third period, you are on Friday at 1:30. And sixth period, you are Friday at 2:30. I also posted those to Google Classroom. And speaking of Google Classroom, make sure that you guys are checking those daily just to see, not just my class, but for other classes, just to see what your teachers have posted. There's some important things that go out there as well, okay? So we are on chapter 11 of The Giver. Last chapter, Jonas met the receiver of memory and kind of got a little bit of an introduction as to what the receiver's job is. And we talked about how his job is basically to hold all of the memories of back of the past. So not just of his own childhood, but for whatever reason and however they were able to do it, the people in the community do not have memories of the past, not their own lives, but think like history, things that have happened in the world. So only one person holds those memories, and that is the receiver of memory, which Jonas is in training to be now. So he is going to be receiving his first memory in this chapter, and it's going to be of snow. Snow does not exist in the community. Not that it doesn't snow there, literally the idea of snow does not exist. Excuse me, Jonas does not know what that is. The word downhill is another thing. He doesn't know what downhill means, which means everything is flat in the community. Always be thinking about why. Why would the community create a world that was that way? Okay? All right, chapter 11. Jonas felt nothing unusual at first. He felt only the light touch of the old man's hands on his back. He tried to relax, to breathe evenly. The room was absolutely silent, and for a moment, Jonas feared that he might disgrace himself now on the first day of his training by falling asleep. Then he shivered. He realized that the touch of the hands felt suddenly cold. At the same instant, breathing in, he felt the air change, and his very breath was cold. He licked his lips, and in doing so, his tongue touched the suddenly chilled air. It was very startling, but he was not at all frightened now. He was filled with energy, and he breathed again, feeling the sharp intake of frigid air. Now, too, he could feel cold air swirling around his entire body. He felt it blow against his hands where they lay at his sides and over his back. The touch of the man's hands seemed to have disappeared. Now he became aware of an entirely new sensation. Pinpricks? No, because they were soft and without pain. Tiny, cold, feather-like feelings peppered his body and face. He put out his tongue again and caught one of the dots of cold upon it. It disappeared from his awareness instantly, but he caught another and another. The sensation made him smile. One part of his consciousness knew that he was still lying there on the bed in the annex room, yet another separate part of his being was upright now in a sitting position, and beneath him he could feel that he was not on the soft decorated bed covering at all, but rather seated on a flat, hard surface. His hands now held, though at the same time they were still motionless at his sides, a rough, damp rope. And he could see, though his eyes were closed, he could see a bright whirling torrent of crystals in the air around him, and he could see them gather on the backs of his hands like cold fur. His breath was visible. Beyond, through the swirl of what he now somehow perceived was the thing the old man had spoken of, snow, he could look out and down a great distance. He was up high someplace. The ground was thick with the furry snow, but he sat slightly above it on a hard, flat object. Sled, he knew abruptly. He was sitting on a thing called sled, and the sled itself seemed to be poised at the top of a long, extended mound that rose from the very land where he was. Even as he thought the word mound, his new consciousness told him hill. Then the sled, with Jonas himself upon it, began to move through the snowfall, and he understood instantly that now he was going downhill. No voice made an explanation. The experience explained itself to him. His face cut through the frigid air as he began the descent, moving through the substance called snow on the vehicle called sled, which propelled itself on what he now knew without a doubt to be runners. Comprehending all of those things as he sped downward, he was free to enjoy the breathless glee that overwhelmed him, the speed, the clear cold air, the total silence, the feeling of balance and excitement and peace. Then, as the angle of incline lessened, as the mound, the hill, flattened, nearing the bottom, the sled's forward motion slowed. The snow was piled now around it, and he pushed with his body, moving it forward, not wanting the exhilarating ride to end. Finally, the obstruction of the piled snow was too much for the thin runners of the sled, and he came to a stop. He sat there for a moment, panting, holding the rope in his cold hands. Tentatively, he opened his eyes. Not his snow hill sled eyes, for they had been open throughout the strange ride. He opened his ordinary eyes and saw that he was still on the bed, that he had not moved at all. The old man, still beside the bed, was watching him. "How do you feel?" he asked. Jonas sat up and tried to answer honestly. "Surprised," he said after a moment. The old man wiped his forehead with his sleeve. "Oof," he said, "it was exhausting, but even transmitting that tiny memory to you, I think it lightened me just a little." "Do you mean—" "You did say I could ask questions." The man nodded, encouraging his question. "Do you mean that now you don't have the memory of it? Of that ride on the sled anymore?" "That's right, a little weight off this old body." "But it was such fun, and now you don't have it anymore. I took it from you." But the old man laughed. "All I gave you was one ride on one sled in one snow on one hill. I have a whole world of them in my memory. I could give them to you one by one 1,000 times, and there would still be more." "Are you saying that we could do it again?" Jonas asked. "I'd really like to. I think I could steer by pulling the rope. I didn't try this time because it was so new." The old man, laughing, shook his head. "Maybe another time for a treat. But there's no time, really, just to play. I only wanted to begin by showing you how it works. Now," he said, turning businesslike, "lie back down. I want to—" Jonas did. He was eager for whatever experience would come next. But he had suddenly so many questions. "Why don't we have snow and sleds and hills?" he asked. "And when did we, in the past, did my parents have sleds when they were young? Did you?" The old man shrugged and gave a short laugh. "No," he told Jonas. "It's a very distant memory. That's why it was so exhausting. I had to tug it forward from many generations back. It was given to me when I was a new receiver, and the previous receiver had to pull it through a long time period too." "But what happened to those things? Snow and the rest of it?" "Climate control. Snow made growing food difficult, limited the agricultural periods, and unpredictable weather made transportation almost impossible at times. It wasn't a practical thing, so it became obsolete when we went to sameness." Keep that word in mind, sameness, everything the same. "And hills too," he added. "They made conveyance of goods unwieldy. Trucks, buses slowed them down, so—" He waved his hand as if a gesture had caused hills to disappear. "Sameness," he concluded. Jonas frowned. "I wish we had those things still, just now and then." The old man smiled. "So do I," he said, "but that choice is not ours." "But sir," Jonas suggested, "since you have so much power—" The man corrected him. "Honor," he said firmly. "I have great honor, so will you. But you will find that that is not the same as power. Lie quietly now. Since we've entered into the topic of climate, let me give you something else. And this time, I'm not going to tell you the name of it, because I want to test the receiving. You should be able to perceive the name without being told. I gave away snow and sled and downhill and runners by telling them to you in advance. Without being instructed, Jonas closed his eyes again. He felt the hands on his back again. He waited. Now it came more quickly, the feelings. This time the hands didn't become cold, but instead began to feel warm on his body. They moistened a little. The warmth spread, extending across his shoulders, up his neck, onto the side of his face. He could feel it through his clothes parts, too, a pleasant all-over sensation, and when he licked his lips this time, the air was hot and heavy. He didn't move. There was no sled. His posture didn't change. He was simply alone someplace, out of doors, lying down, and the warmth came from far above. It was not as exciting as the ride through the snowy air, but it was pleasurable and comforting. Suddenly, he perceived the word for it: sunshine. He perceived that it came from the sky. Then it ended. Sunshine, he said aloud, opening his eyes. Good, you did get the word. That makes my job easier, not so much explaining. And it came from the sky. That's right, the old man said, just the way it used to. Before sameness, before climate control, Jonas added. The man laughed. You receive well and learn quickly. I'm very pleased with you. That's enough for today, I think. We're off to a good start. There was a question bothering Jonas. Sir, he said, the chief elder told me, she told everyone, and you told me too, that it would be painful. So I was a little scared, but it didn't hurt at all. I really enjoyed it. He looked quizzically at the old man. The man sighed. I started you with memories of pleasure. My previous failure gave me the wisdom to do that. He took a few deep breaths. Jonas, he said, it will be painful, but it need not be painful yet. I'm brave. I really am. Jonas sat up a little straighter. The old man looked at him for a moment. He smiled. I can see that, he said. Well, since you asked the question, I think I have enough energy for one more transmission. Lie down once more. This will be the last today. Jonas obeyed cheerfully. He closed his eyes, waiting, and felt the hands again. Then he felt the warmth again, the sunshine again, coming from the sky of his other consciousness that was so new to him. This time, as he lay basking in the wonderful warmth, he felt the passage of time. His real self was aware that it was only a minute or two, but his other memory-receiving self felt hours pass in the sun. His skin began to sting. Restlessly, he moved one arm, bending it, and felt a sharp pain in the crease of his inner arm at the elbow. Ouch, he said loudly and shifted on the bed. Ow, he said, wincing at the shift, and even moving his mouth to speak made his face hurt. He knew there was a word, but the pain kept him from grasping it. Then it ended. He opened his eyes, wincing with discomfort. It hurt, he told the man, and I couldn't get the word for it. It was sunburn, the old man told him. It hurt a lot, Jonas said, but I'm glad you gave it to me. It was interesting, and now I understand better what it meant that there would be pain. The man did not respond. He sat silently for a second. Finally, he said, Get up now. It's time for you to go home. They both walked to the center of the room. Jonas put his tunic back on. Goodbye, sir, he said. Thank you for my first day. The old man nodded to him. He looked drained and a little sad. Sir, Jonas said shyly. Yes, do you have a question? It's just that I don't know your name. I thought you were the receiver, but you say that now I'm the receiver, so I don't know what to call you. The man had sat back down in the comfortable upholstered chair. He moved his shoulders around as if to ease away an aching sensation. He seemed terribly weary. Call me the giver, he told Jonas. Okay, so in this chapter, Jonas receives his first memories. The first is of snow and riding down a hill covered in snow on a sled. He then receives a memory of sunshine. And these two memories tell us once again that the community, for whatever reason and through whatever method, have found a way to have climate control in the community. They've been able to control things so that there is no seasons, really. There's no extreme seasons, I should say. There's no snow, we know that. And then we know that there's no sunshine. We know that even on a cloudy day, the sun is there. And we know that on our earth, without the sun being here, we would all die. So again, this is a fictional book. It's futuristic. It takes place in the future. So this community has been able to build an area where they do not have the sun, they do not have snow, they do not have hills, and this is all called sameness. When the community decided to move to sameness, everything the same. So the weather was all the same, there were no hills, everything was flat, and they gave a few of those reasons, and a lot of it was just practicality. If you have seasons, that makes growing food more difficult, right? Snow makes it hard for different crops to grow, or extreme cold does. And same thing with heat. We live in the valley. We know that pretty much every summer we're in a drought, right? It gets up to 100, 110, 115 degrees. And oftentimes that really makes it hard on agriculture. So that one makes sense, right? They needed to provide food for the community, and so it made sense. All right, let's get rid of the extreme weather so that we can have food for everyone. They decided not to have hills or to get rid of hills because it made travel more difficult, right? So all of those things, everything that the community has decided is for a purpose. So always be keeping that in mind whenever we come across something in the community and you think, well, why? Why would they do that? There's always a reason. It's not necessarily always, in your opinion, a good reason, but there is a reason for why they have done all that they have done, okay? So keep that word in mind, sameness. They moved to sameness, and that means they moved to sameness. So it was not always like this. Before sameness in this community, there was a whole world where all of these things existed. And the very last memory that Jonas receives is of a sunburn. And he is thinking, oh, that's the pain they were talking about. You're right, that was painful. The giver, who we know is the old man now, that's what our title is, the giver. He's the old man. He gives the memories, Jonas receives it. So the giver's kind of quiet when he says that. We can expect that Jonas is going to be experiencing a lot more painful things than simply a sunburn, okay? Let me know if you have any questions. Again, come to the Zoom tomorrow so we can catch up. And otherwise, we'll talk soon, okay? Have a good day, guys. See you later.